Yeah. On today's show, we got Kevin Aldridge, we got Kevin Gordon, we have Phil Heimlich, and of course, myself, Nathan Ivey. Please take a second to like and, in particular, share today's show. And we really want people to find us on YouTube. If you're on YouTube, we want to be connected with you. You can find us at Hot Mic Podcast Crew. Also, we'll be taking phone calls at some point today if you'd like to chime in at 513 873 7134. That is our number. You can lock it in and use that number anytime we get together. Hope everybody's doing well. How was the week?
So far, so good.
So far, so good. Good, good, good. Well, let's just jump straight into it. Let's jump straight into it. So, with the first topic. Well, Trump has pushed baseless claims about Haitians in Springfield, Ohio, claims that have been debunked. And at a recent campaign rally, former President Trump said that he's going to visit Springfield, Ohio, which has raised some eyebrows and begs the question, is this a good idea? Is this a good idea for Trump to visit Springfield, Ohio, considering everything that's happened in the last couple of weeks?
I'll go
Well,
first.
I think
don't
I
care. Go ahead, Phil.
Kevin. No, I just I think on our last podcast, I think I said I was leading a group of missionaries up to Springfield to protect the cats and the dogs. I actually think this whole thing has kind of lost a lot of its humor because it just shocks me that somebody could make this stuff up and it's clearly make it up, and that whatever it is, half the country or whatever percent is supporting Trump would still support him, would still vote for him. I mean, this reflects the cruelty. That's the only word I could say. I could say the cruelty that somebody to get elected would essentially target a group. I don't see any difference between what the 30s. He's targeting a group to help him politically. And maybe I'm being too harsh, but I don't see any difference here. So even though I like, there were a lot of kind of nice, kind of funny comments initially, it's kind of lost its humor for me.
Well, I think it's a good idea that he goes there. And in fact, going back, I think the fact that he's actually shined a light on what's going on in Springfield in terms of taking, as we discussed the last time, that you got a population and then all of a sudden it double or it increases by 25% in a 4-year period of time. The fact that the state of Ohio didn't do anything to boost up the infrastructure and to do anything there. And, I've been thinking about this all week long. And when you invite a guest to your home, okay, you make sure that they have a place to sleep. You provide them with some food. You give them some shelter, and you accommodate them. If we're bringing the Haitians in particular, they were invited in here because their government is so corrupt that their economy is in shambles, and it's been in a shambles. And especially after the Clinton Foundation ripped off the money that was going to them and put it in their own pockets and screwed the people there, they come here as invited guests. Why isn't the federal government making sure that they have a place to stay, that they have possibly a job waiting for them, and if they have the job, at least build the houses or do something? And if they move, and from what I've been reading, apparently word of mouth, people that went to Springfield, they said, hey, there's jobs here. They told their friends, they told their family, they moved there for the jobs and so on, which is all well and good. But if you bring that many people in, then the city should make sure, or some contractors or somebody should have been building houses in order to accommodate this. I think off mic, we talked about your business, Phil, that you're buying homes and all this sort of stuff. One of the problems in the home buying market right now are these corporations that are going in and bidding and buying these homes from the private market, jacking up the rents and so on. If this is what's going on in Springfield, from what the people and looking at the city council meetings, this is some of the things that they're saying. Why isn't this being prevented? So shining a light on what's going on, I think is a good.
If I can get a chance to get in,
I think we ought to look at the history.
Phil, if I could get a chance, because I haven't had a chance to weigh in yet. You and Kevin. let me just say this. First of all, Kevin, what you just described with the housing market is happening right here in the city of Cincinnati, and it's been written about and talked about many times about these private investors who come in and buy up properties and jack up the rent. So it's not a phenomenon that's exclusive to Springfield.
Exactly.
One might ask why this is being allowed to happen all across the country. But I'll stick to the question at hand, which was, is it a good idea for Donald Trump to go to Springfield? No, it's not. It's a terrible idea. It's a selfish idea. It's a purely political idea. If you know how much that the city of Springfield is already suffering in terms of the strain that is being put on public services, police, fire, EMS, et cetera, there in the city, the only thing a visit from a presidential candidate is going to do is exacerbate and strain already strained resources in a community, which the mayor of Springfield, who is a Republican, by the way, has already highlighted and asked the president not to come. So we use the example of when somebody invites you into your home, how you should treat them. How should somebody who is not invited into your home respond when people have politely asked you not to show up? So I think that this is purely a political.
Well, you come across the border anyway, and
Let me
you.
finish, Kevin. I didn't interrupt you. I didn't interrupt you. I'll let you finish your thought. But I think it's purely political on behalf of Trump. He's not interested in doing anything. If he really wants to help the people of Springfield and so forth and so on, he's a billionaire according to his finances. Why doesn't he bring some of the resources that he has to bear if he really cares about the people of Springfield and what's going on there? But you know what? He's not going to do that because he doesn't really care. This is just another political prop for him, and I think it's incredibly selfish and more just of what we expect from him and JD Vance. He should stay away.
I can see how this is shaping up. We've got 3 other people here, and it's me. Okay, so it's 3-on-1 today as opposed to 2-on-1, but that's okay.
Hey,
Kevin,
like
you
Trump
can handle it. You can handle it. You can handle it.
Goddamn right I can.
Hey, Kevin, just like Trump at the last debate, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, Kevin G, tell us why it's why you think it's a good idea for Trump to go to
Springfield. As they
Springfield.
always say, you know.
Every day, Phil. Every day.
All right. All right. Let me
why is it a good idea for Trump to go,
it's
Kevin?
It's a good idea because, again, who was talking about Springfield and the problems up there that they're having until Trump started and JD Vance. Now, let's not forget that JD Vance is a senator. Okay, he's from Middletown, Ohio, which is fairly close to Springfield. He has said that his constituents have been talking to him about this and have been concerned about this. And he brought it up. Now, the fact that there is a problem, the fact that DeWine has finally gotten off of his butt and started just providing some resources to that city, which we talked about before. Finally, somebody shined a light on this. Now, maybe it's not the proper way of doing it, but at least the light was shined on it. And from the standpoint that points to a situation where what we're seeing in New York, when you have an influx of people that you're not ready for, it exacerbates the city services, the schools, the hospitals, and so on. And rather than the federal government who invited these people in, instead of just bringing them in, should be providing the resources.
But Kevin's
I think you're mistaken. If I may just say,
he's not answering. And all of that little soliloquy Kevin just gave, he did not answer your question in terms of why it's a good idea for him to go. The light has already been shined on Springfield. There are already being discussions had there. Kevin, by Trump showing up, what is going to happen positively by him physically planting his butt in the city of Springfield? What good is going to possibly come from that? You can't come up with one credible
I'll come up with one good idea because that's where voters are, Kevin. You go where the voters are, and if the people up there don't like him and the people are pissed off at him, then when he goes up there, there will be no people in attendance, and it'll be embarrassing.
So it's as I said, it's purely a political thing.
But Donald Trump does not have to bust people into his rallies like Kamala Harris.
Politics. That's not good for Springfield. That's good for him.
Yeah. Why don't we look at the background just a minute? Because with all due respect, Kevin. And not Kevin, the other Kevin, a little confusing here. I think you've misstated what the problem is and the background. So let's just do it real quick. First of all, contrary to the lies that Trump and Vance have said, these are legal immigrants. They are not illegal. And here's how they came in this country. They came to the W. Bush program, okay, which was enacted in light of the unbelievable violence and starvation and chaos in Haiti, which I don't have a problem with. Now, you're suggesting that, oh, they weren't ready for this. It's just overwhelmed the city. Not really true. The fact is that that city had a
in 4 years
had a
increased
huge
the population 25%. You're going to tell me they were ready for this?
It had no. You gotta let me finish. That city was in unbelievable economic decline, largely because they didn't have workers. Okay, if you listen to the comments of the leaders of that city, and the numbers, that overall those Haitian immigrants came for jobs. They got jobs. And the result is that city is doing much better economically than it did before the Haitians. Now, yes, when you bring all those people in, the issues are schools overcrowding and rents going up because you have more competition. But the suggestion that those poison the blood types are coming in and destroying or wrecking the city is really just the opposite in many ways. And I'd also ask you can answer this, Kevin. You're saying it's good they shined a light. Well, maybe so. But lying about people eating cats and dogs, and lying about their being illegal rather as when they're legal. Do you think the lies? Are you okay with those lies?
You know, the thing is that I am not. Quite honestly, I don't know whether they're lies. I do know that there's 911 calls where somebody actually filmed a group of Haitians grabbing some geese from different ponds.
That's been
that's a different.
That's been debunked. That's been debunked.
Kevin.
The person who started
everything you guys want to talk about, everything you want to talk about, all you say is that
he lives in this misinformation, false narrative ecosystem where he consumes all of this debunked crap. Listen, for you, I said this in the podcast the other day. It says something about your mentality when you are someone who would believe something about a group of people that is so ridiculous. It already speaks to a preconceived prejudice and notion and bias that you already have. Because, Kevin, I guarantee you, if I told you there were a group of people in Indian Hill who were eating cats and dogs, you would say, get out of here. There's no way you would buy it. But because they're Haitian immigrants,
I wouldn't just
there are other people, it's not that far out of your realm of belief.
I wouldn't
dismiss it. Rounding up geese and eating it. Come on, man, get out of here with that crap.
Well, actually, the woman who started the rumor on I think it was on Facebook or some other thing, the first woman who threw this up online has now apologized and said it didn't happen. And she's actually apologized to the Haitians there for having.
But that doesn't matter to Kevin. That doesn't matter to Kevin, Phil, because in his mind,
my basic point here, Kevin, and I'm going to say it one more time, and I am not going to.
It doesn't matter that J.D. Vance and Donald Trump
being told that I'm living in some
one at a time, guys.
We can't hear you. We can't hear you guys.
Bring 25% more people into a community without having the resources in order to handle that. Now, shining a light on the fact that the city failed these people, that the government failed these people, and especially the federal government failed these people to assimilate them into the population. And the fact that you look at the various city council meetings and you see the number of concerned citizens that are packed in there. I mean, I've been to city council meetings. I've been to fiscal court meetings here in Campbell County, Kenton County, Boone County, and so on. Generally, there's hardly anybody at these meetings. But when you have a packed house and people talking about issues and that they want them addressed and the city completely ignores them, what else do you do? Now, okay, hoax wise, as far as eating cats and dogs, fine, no problem there. But the basic problem is that nobody wants to talk about is the failure on the part of the federal government, the city, and the state to accommodate these people and make sure that they're taken care of.
But see, that's the thing, though. So let me jump in and give my flow about it. That's the thing, though. It's not about pointing fingers. It's not about who's to blame. It's about where is the help. That's the whole issue, right? It doesn't matter who did what. It's all about how do we service.
Well, how do you identify the problem, Nathan, if you don't
You just identify the problem. That's how you do it. You just identify it. So let me answer the question. Is it a good idea for Trump to go to Springfield? Is it a good idea for Trump to go to Springfield? Number one, it takes a lot of gall and nerve for a man who created this situation by telling lies, trying to vilify and criminalize one segment of people. Then you want to turn around and go there and turn it into a purely political spectacle. Listen, if Trump is going to go to Springfield and actually bring some resources and actually make it about the people there and not himself, I'm all for it. But there's nothing in his history that tells me that's what this is all
That's a
about.
lie. That's a
Nothing
lie.
in his history that tells
That's
me
a lie.
how
And
is
you
it a
know
lie?
it.
It's an opinion. It's an
Well,
opinion.
well, your opinion is misinformed. You live in this.
Tell me how
vacuum
my
that
opinion is
Kevin
misinformed. Go
Aldridge
right
is
ahead,
talking
Kevin.
about. Okay, what was the spectacle that he created when he went to New Palestine, Ohio, and brought aid and brought focus
Brought aid.
there?
What aid did he bring?
He brought the people there, and he brought the cameras, and he brought the media attention to that, to the point where Joe Biden never showed up, the coward.
Pete Buttigieg, who's the transportation secretary, showed up. The people that actually work in the government that the problem was under, they showed up and dealt with it. Trump didn't show up with any resources in New Palestine.
He's not the president. He doesn't.
Okay. So I'm not lying. Like I said, there's nothing in Trump's history that would let me believe that he has any sincere intentions about what's happening in Springfield. To
Nathan,
me, it's pure politics.
All that's going to happen is Trump is going to go there. He's going to pretend like he cares. And then he's going to lie about the things that he saw.
Maybe he should go there and say, maybe he should go there.
This is his MO. You can already, I could write this column right now before he even lands into this.
Of course you can, because you already have the
narrative. And you would see how it bears out. Yeah, Kevin, because I look at what people's track record is. Like I don't live in the fantasy land of denial about what people say and what people do, as apparently a lot of people who support the former president do. Look, I said it. He's an open book. He says what he's going to do. He shows you what he is. But people.
All right. So what is he going to do? Tell me right now, Kevin. What is he going to do? I can't help that.
Let's talk about what he says he's going to do. First of all, he said, before even this came up, he said he's going to set up these camps and he's going to deport 10 million people. Okay, that's the first thing. And the quote that I think Kevin Aldridge was referring to, I think it's from Maya Angelou, but I also heard Manchin use it from West Virginia. And this is a great quote. If somebody tells you who they are, believe them. So to answer your question, what he's going to do, he says, number one, he's going to deport 10 to 11 million illegals. However, he also now says he's going to deport those Haitians from there. But so there's a whole bed of lies. One, he's lying that they're illegal, which they're not. And two, well, he's saying maybe that is true. He is going to take all these people and just drag them, put them in a concentration camp or whatever camp that Stephen Miller's been talking about, along with the other 10 million.
According to his plan and what he's talked about, and if you're going to go into the Rachel Maddow and the spoon-fed regurgitators in the mainstream media narrative, if you're talking about
Trump's own words, I'm talking about Trump's own words.
If you're talking about people that are here
10 to
from
11
prisons,
million.
if you're talking about the individual people, the gangs that have come into this country, and the people that are committing crime, the first job or the first thing that's going to be done is those people are going to be deported. And then from that point on, it's going to be probably a case-by-case basis.
That's not what he says. He just says they're going to deport. It's going to be the biggest deportation in history. And he doesn't separate just the criminals or whoever the bad guys are. He's saying, and Stephen Miller is saying,
they're going to deport everybody. And he said he was going to start in Springfield
with legal.
So again, another reason why this isn't a smart idea. Why are you going to go into a community where you've already said, where people are already scared, where they're already on edge, where you've already identified that even though they're here legally under the protection of our federal government, that the first thing you're going to do is deport an entire community of people out of the country? I'm sorry. I just don't think that's a smart idea. I don't think that's a smart idea for him. I don't think, let alone for Springfield or the country, I don't think that's a smart idea for him.
If they are there by protection of the federal government under this particular plan, that apparently a lot of them are, then that case is closed, that there's not
No,
going to
it's
be
not
anything.
closed. It's not closed, Kevin. Trump is saying it's not closed. You're saying case closed. I agree with you. I thank you for that, Kevin. Case should be closed, but that's not what the former president is saying. He's not saying the case is closed. He's saying elect him, and even though they're here federally protected, I'm getting rid of them. That's what he said.
Can we all agree that population growth is a good thing, and that at the end of the day, we're really talking about good problems happening
If
in
it's done
Springfield?
right,
Well,
yes.
here's what I will agree with that what Kevin says is, look, nobody is denying the fact that there are some challenges that have been brought about by the growth and the influx that are there in Springfield. That there are some frustrations, legitimate frustrations that people in Springfield have, and that there are issues to be talked about. Population growth is good, but you also have to have the resources and be prepared to deal with that. Otherwise, you're going to have the strains and things that you see when you have large amounts of population growth that communities might not be ready for. And so there is a legitimate conversation to be had about those things. The unfortunate part is you can't have legitimate, in earnest dialogue about those things when you've got a guy who's demagoguing, talking about people eating cats and dogs, because that becomes the narrative and the conversation over the very real problems. And it dehumanizes a group of people unnecessarily, that plays into a fear mongering that you have to be responsible
Both
for our own
sides.
vote.
Everybody has to take
He doesn't want to answer
responsibility
that. He
for what
doesn't
they-
want to answer.
What did I just say?
All right.
I said
Well, it's a
everybody
simple
has.
question. I didn't ask you
responsibility.
about both sides. I asked you about us.
Of course,
as
you don't want to
individuals.
talk about the other side. That's okay.
Yeah.
That's
That's
fine.
all you want to
Well,
talk
I think
about.
it's, guys, I think it's worth pointing out, just which I find interesting and scary, is that this whole thing about immigrants eating pets is actually an old trope. It started with the Chinese. They said the Chinese were eating rats. Okay, so this is a continual thing. If I may, Nathan, can I suggest a topic? If you want to throw it on the list, that I find interesting.
Sure.
If you want to move on, which is the Black Nazi in North Carolina. I just find that interesting, if you know what I'm referring to. For
I do know what you're
number of-
referring to.
What? I didn't hear you. Your mic is cutting
I'm
out.
talking. I'm sorry. The Black Nazi, the gubernatorial candidate in North Carolina. You know who I'm referring to?
No.
Yeah, maybe that we save that topic for next week, so we can all be up to
That's
speed on
fine.
it.
That's fine. It's just been in the news in the last day or two about all these horrible pro-Nazi.
Hey Phil, I think you're hitting your
Holocaust-
table or your microphone or something.
Sorry. I'm just going to say this has been in the news, and it has some relation to what we just talked about. It's been in the news pretty heavily the last day or so. The guy running for Republican governor in my party,
Yeah, I'm aware.
North Carolina, and all this stuff is coming out about all these pro-Nazi, Holocaust denying, crazy, insane things. And
Well, let's bring up a topic that wasn't on the schedule for today, and so that you guys are familiar with this.
Let's move on to a different topic. Something that look, I think we've sufficiently covered this one, Nathan. Let's go on to.
Yeah, I've just got one more thing to say on the topic, but it's a slightly little different thing as it relates to Springfield. Is that I thought about this 2 days ago, and I thought to myself, Trump did it again. He did it again, and the media took the bait again. Like once again, Trump says something weird, and the media spends weeks and weeks talking about it. And it's a win for Trump, because if they're covering that, they're not covering what VP Harris is doing and what she's saying. And
Well, that's easy because she's not doing anything.
And then those same media
still doesn't have any policies.
Hey, that's fair. That's
all we
your
know
opinion.
about her is that she's born a middle-class child.
Which is exactly my point, Kevin. Which is exactly my point. So what will happen is the media will go down this rabbit hole on Trump said, and the consequence is that there's a media blackout when it comes to VP Harris, and then these same media outlets will turn around and say, well, people don't know who she is. Is it just me, or do you guys see that?
Well, when you look at the numbers and you see that about 100% of the coverage of Kamala Harris has been positive and 93% of the coverage of Trump has been negative, the fact that it's as close as it is absolutely amazing. that when you go on and every interview you start off with, well, I was raised, talking about, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? Maybe I should ask that question. Are you better off today than you were 4 years ago?
Yeah, I can answer that
Well,
question.
can we say her name is Kamala? Are you doing that purposely, Kevin? It's
What?
Kamala, not Kamala. Kamala. But you know that, right?
I have heard it said both ways. And
Not from her.
So
Not from her. You haven't.
Kevin's unbelievable, man. Hey,
Hey, I love Kevin.
let's just move on.
so
man.
are you guys.
I love Kevin.
Now, the fact is that, okay, again, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?
Yes.
I can answer. I'll answer that
100%
question.
yes.
Actually, I
I'll
am.
tell you how I answer
Absolutely.
the question is 4 years ago, or maybe we should say just a little over, less than that, our democracy was attacked by a violent mob that injured 150 police officers, and several deaths. No, several deaths resulted. And the thing is,
one death.
No,
And
there
it was
were a number of
Ashley Babbitt
suicides.
who
There were a
was
number of
murdered.
suicides that came out. No. A heart attack. Police officer had a heart attack the next day, and 2 or 3 others killed themselves. But putting that aside, this wasn't you're asking, are we better off for you to it?
Okay, Phil, if it was a violent attack.
Let me finish.
Go ahead.
A violent attack.
Continue your lie.
A violent attack.
Continue your lie.
Incited by the president of the United States. Along
What did
with
he
his
say that
attempt-
incited that?
Let him get it out,
He
Kevin.
said
No.
he lied. He spread lies, as he still does, that the 2020 election, was rigged. And then he invited. Remember the text he sent, or the tweet? It'll be wild. It'll be wild. And then he gave a speech, which clearly incited them to attack. And he waited for 3 hours.
That's a lie. That's a lie. What did he say, Phil? What did he say? What did he say? He said,
Let him finish,
march
Kevin.
down there peacefully and let your voice be heard.
No.
Did he say attack the Capitol? No, that was Ray Epps and some of the Secret Service, or I'm sorry, not the Secret Service, but FBI agents that were planted there that caused some of the insurrection. Why hasn't Ray Epps ever been arrested?
Excuse me,
and brought
Ray
up on
Epps.
charges?
Are you familiar with what happened with Ray Epps? Ray Epps is suing Fox News for lying about him being what you said. Ray Epps is actually
when he's standing there the day before saying, we're going to go in and we're going to take over the Capitol.
That whole Ray Epps thing was, forgive me, bullshit. It was pure BS.
Did you see the video? Did you see the video the night before?
I saw the video, but I told you,
Well,
Ray
what
Epps
did he
has
say?
since come out. Ray Epps himself has come out and said, I'm not in the FBI. I had nothing to do with the FBI. In fact, he's been charged.
But did he say, let's go in and attack the Capitol tomorrow?
You're missing
Follow
the
me
point.
in?
The point is, no, you're missing the point. You asked, are we better off? What I'm saying is 4 years ago, our democracy was at risk, not only from that attack, but pressure put on Mike Pence, pressure put on the Justice Department, Georgia, the Secretary of State, to overturn an election. And we had a president who actually did all this. So in my view, our democracy is more precious even than our economy. And so, yes, I feel better off now than I did 4 years ago.
Okay, so we've got a democracy where anybody that speaks out against the government suddenly is now a terrorist. Anybody that shows up at a school board
I'm not talking
meeting,
about speaking out.
okay, and then you talk about the media and big tech.
Let him finish, Phil.
Nathan, let me just say this. This
our democracy.
This is the type
we currently have a Democratic candidate.
Let him finish, Kevin.
Selected, not elected, and that's democracy. You're going to tell me that we've got a situation where somebody who can earn no votes in a primary is selected by the DNC bigwigs and inserted into something and is selected, not elected.
Legal.
And we're going to
100% legal.
That's all legal, though.
100% legal.
Yeah, I mean,
let me just say this.
The Republicans could do the same thing.
Let me just say this, and
go ahead.
That what Kevin is doing, this is par for the course in the era of Trump. The over-exaggeration, the twisting of facts and outright misrepresenting facts. This is the time that we live in, and this is what makes it so difficult for Americans to understand what's going on and what the truth of the matter is, especially if they don't have the time nor the inclination to do their own homework, because you get this type of stuff. Everybody,
I haven't done my homework.
Everybody who stands up at a school board
and says something is labeled a terrorist.
Come on, man, get out of here with that stuff. Average, thinking people know that that's not true, because people get up at every school board meeting, at every city council meeting, and they say something and they're not labeled a terrorist. So let's just stop with the hyperbole. Let's just stop with the we're so aggrieved stuff. People are tired of it, Kevin. And I hope that
so that Merrick Garland didn't put out the email
with that kind of stuff will show.
Let's move on, guys. Let me add something else to the conversation.
So you mean Merrick Garland didn't target these people that were attending these school board meetings and say that they should be considered domestic terrorists? He didn't put out that memo?
I never read that memo.
Of course you didn't.
What do you mean? I'm not prepared. If I had read it, I would say I read it, but I've never read that. I'm not saying that you're wrong.
Of course you don't want to read it.
That I haven't read it.
Okay.
I'm not saying you're wrong, but let me move on here. Let me bring up something that's a little bit lighter here, and I want to talk about Diddy. Everybody's been talking about Diddy. He, as I understand it, is currently in lockup because he did not receive a bail judgment. The judge thought he was a flight risk, and maybe he is. But it's interesting. I was having a conversation with someone yesterday, and this person, who was a female, said that they thought that Diddy was mentally ill. And I thought, man, I never really thought about it like that. And so I want to get you guys' opinion about it. Are we looking at mental illness here, or is this what happens when a man gets power? Does power corrupt you? Absolutely. But what do you think, guys?
Not everybody. I mean, power doesn't corrupt everybody. Absolutely. I mean, I think if you have a moral base and a moral compass, it won't. But if you don't, then yes, power and greed can corrupt you. Absolutely. I'm not sure that I'm ready to go so far as to say that it's mental illness. I'm certainly not a psychological professional. I'm sure that before he stands trial or whatever, if that's going to be his defense, that he'll have to go through some type of competency evaluation. I think what's more likely is, maybe there might have been some drug induced. I mean, even Diddy himself has admitted to being in some bad places in his life, primarily because of some substance abuse issues. But even that's an excuse, I think, sort of at the end of the day. Look, sometimes we just have to come to grips with the fact that people do some really bad things, and people do really bad things with thought and intention. People do some really bad things without regard to how it's going to impact other people and victims. I don't know whether that's Sean Diddy Combs. He has not yet gone through the court system in the process. I'll say it doesn't look good. And I'm not ready to go that step to give the mental illness card out. I'd have to see some sort of psychological evaluation that would confirm that.
The Bible has a word for it. It's real simple. It's called sin. That's what it's called.
Sin. Okay.
Sin. Yeah, right. It isn't, he grew up with a whatever family, maybe he did, or he had this or this issues. It's called sin when you do that stuff.
What about drug abuse? Like if he was addicted to drugs, should that be factored into this as well? I mean, it does alter your brain chemistry. It will make you do things that maybe you wouldn't do if you weren't on those drugs.
Well, I think more than anything
I'm a former
Go ahead, Phil.
I was just saying, I'm a former prosecutor, and when you have a alleged crime, you have to have an intent. There has to be a state of to do something, or you act recklessly. Okay, I would say that there are some exceptions, but in most cases, if you commit a crime while you are on drugs, where you were voluntarily on those drugs, generally that's not going to stand up in court. That's not a defense.
Got it.
Taking a step back to the overall issue of what happens as people become famous, as they become, more powerful, they have more, influence and so on. all along the way, if they have a certain talent, they are enabled. I don't care whether it's in the professional athletes or whatever. They are enabled by people along the way, and some of their bad behavior is overlooked because they can make money off of this person. I think if you go into and you look at what is happening as far as some of these record executives now suddenly resigning and leaving. One of the things they're concerned about is, I guess, all the cameras in the mansion, and was it freak off parties and stuff like that, who attended, kind of almost like an Epstein Island, who all was there. And when you've got a group of enablers telling you, hey, you're the greatest thing since pockets were invented, and you're so wonderful, you're so fantastic, and everybody wants to be around that person, it, if a strong-willed person sometimes, or can't, a strong-willed person wouldn't give into that. But too many of these people possibly have some insecurities that they buy into this and think they can do no wrong, and their behavior continues to spin out of control. Now, as far as, when you are talking about some of the things that are alleged, I can't even imagine in my wildest dreams being involved in something like that, and even wanting to be involved in sex trafficking, underage girls, or anything along those lines. But I have heard theories out there as far as Epstein and that. Once you get to a point where you can afford anything you want, okay, you sit there and people fantasize about, what would I do if I hit the lottery? What's my goal and all this sort of stuff. Once you've accomplished that, it's all of a sudden it's like, okay, now what can I do that nobody else can do, or nobody else should even think about doing? And you start doing behavior with, in this case, underage girls, which is taboo, but hey, I can get away with it. And that type of mentality, you look at Epstein and all that, but what we don't see then is where's the list? Where are the people? What is being hidden as far as everybody that attended Epstein Island, the manifests and all that sort of stuff of the people that traveled there? I'm kind of interested in how Diddy got to this point and was enabled along the way, and people that knew. Weinstein, the whole thing about that, how many people turned a blind eye to that and said, well, that's just Weinstein, and of course, if I want to be successful or if I want to be famous, then I got to put up with the sexual harassment to do this. Okay, so then I look at this from the standpoint of, where in the hell are people that have made it? People who are famous, the most famous rock stars or the famous singers, suddenly turning the camera around and saying, this is how I got here. I had to do this. I did this. I did this. This is what's wrong with the record industry, and this needs to be investigated, and it needs to be cleaned up. But no, they're comfortable. They've made their money. They're happy. They're not going to speak out. And I think I think there's sins, Phil, sins across the board. The enablers, the people who have made it, that haven't turned around and said, this shouldn't have happened, and this shouldn't be going on.
If I may say, Kevin, just quickly, you're quite correct about accusing enablers, okay? But and those who turn a blind eye to what is purely evil, okay? But with all due respect, over the last, I guess it's 8 years, and even though I always liked and respected Rob Portman, who was a friend of mine, but he and McConnell and down the list, along with all the media folks who have money and got a lot of their audience from kind of being pro-Trump, I would say that the rise of Donald Trump and the whole MAGA thing wouldn't have happened without enablers in my party and enablers in the media who are basically using the MAGA whole thing.
I am amazed at the guy that 8 years ago everybody wanted on their show. Barbara Walters, Oprah Winfrey. In fact, Oprah Winfrey at one point said that if you run for president, I'll be your vice president.
But Oprah Winfrey is endorsing Kamala Harris.
That's fine. She is now.
Yeah.
But back
that's
then,
the only thing that matters.
That's the only thing that matters. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you're saying that somebody is who they are and they reveal to you who they are, well, who is she revealing to us? Oprah Winfrey is one person in my mind that has been a fraud for years. She knows what goes on in the entertainment business. Has
Right.
she ever used her power to help anybody else? Has she ever used her power to shine a light on the corruption in the entertainment industry? Has she ever done anything as far as standing up for women's rights? Has she ever done it? And the only thing that's a women's right
Have
now.
you ever watched Oprah?
Yeah,
Did you ever
well,
watch the Oprah Winfrey show?
okay,
Oprah
yeah,
Winfrey
but
show?
the only thing the only thing women's rights that they're concerned about is so-called reproductive rights. If you're pro-abortion, you can say or do anything, and the left will go with you. But Oprah Winfrey.
What happened, Kevin?
I think Kevin froze up there.
Where is she? She's a fraud. I'm sorry. Oprah Winfrey has been a fraud.
That's a separate issue. But let me get back to this core issue because I'm seeing a thread here. Even with Trump and Kevin G, you ain't gonna like it, but I'm gonna go there anyway. What is it about men and their penises? What is it? Bill Cosby, now P. Diddy, Trump. What is it about men not being able to control their sexual compulsions? What is that?
Some men.
So I think some of it is this, Nathan. Look, let's just say, that human nature is built inside each and every one of us. Some of us control our impulses better than others. But certainly when you reach a certain amount of fame and notoriety and privilege, it takes on a different sort of life of its own than it does for an average man. And Trump kind of said it himself. Hey, when you're famous, they'll let you do it. They'll let you kiss them. They'll let you do this. What he was saying, what people didn't want to admit and what he was saying is that for far too many famous men like him, what he said wasn't a lie. Maybe one of the few truthful moments that he had behind the door was saying that, hey, when you reach a certain status, you can get away with stuff or think you can get away with stuff that the average person doesn't. And if somebody wants to complain, you can pay them off. You can get them to sign an NDA. You can get them to do all of these different things that if you or I were to do it, we wouldn't have the resources or the power or the wherewithal to be able to get somebody to shut up or hide a video or, do the sorts of things that rich and powerful people are able to do to tamp things down and keep things quiet. And it's only until you get to a place where law enforcement gets involved, like in this case with Diddy, where, they have the power to compel powerful people to do things and turn things over, that sometimes some of this stuff gets uncovered. I agree with, a lot of what Phil and Kevin said. I do think there's a dark layer, a dark underground, a very dark underground in Hollywood. There's a dark underground in government. There's wherever there are rich and powerful people with influence, you best believe there's a dark underground somewhere that is allowing people to operate with impunity, sometimes in very salacious and untoward ways. And I think, what may come out with this Diddy case is going to surprise some people. Other people know. I think you got a lot of people in Hollywood who are nervous about, what's going to come out.
Unless he's assigned to Epstein's cell, and then, we'll never hear anything.
Well, here's the thing. Like, we're all grown men. We're all mature men. We know that when
Speak for
it comes
yourself.
to sex, we know that when it comes to sex, that women are very similar to men. They have compulsions and desires. But I rarely to never hear about a very wealthy woman doing some of the things that you hear men doing, whether it's Epstein or Trump or Cosby or Diddy or R. Kelly. Why?
Or Bill Clinton. Or Bill Clinton.
You had to throw that in there. Or Bill Clinton.
Well, you threw Trump in, so I thought
I think it's part of the societal role. I mean, when you think about the dynamic between men and women and the way men sometimes think about those dynamics is men are typically the aggressors, right? In most situations, it's the man who is pursuing the woman and who asks her out or who's sort of expected to make the first move. So I think there's somewhat of that societal cultural norm that we have where the man is quote unquote the hunter or the pursuer, for maybe a better way to describe it. And I think for some men, that can take on a very aggressive and unhealthy sort of approach to it. And again, when you've got people who everywhere you go, people are wanting to throw themselves at you or take a picture with you or be associated to you because of your proximity to fame and fortune, you can develop a severe entitlement mentality to where like, hey, I'm owed this. Hey, I'm good. You start to read your own news clippings, for lack of a better word. I am this great. Everybody do want to be with me. Every woman does want me. And when sometimes when you run upon that one woman who's not about that, that might become the number one challenge for you because everything else is so easy. Now I got this woman who I'm trying to pursue and she don't want me. So now that may become the case of where maybe you get a little bit too overly aggressive and too much in the pursuit of trying to get that, which leads you to do, some of the things that some of these guys do.
Interesting points. Kevin from the comment section writes, Epstein's accomplice was a woman, Nate. And you're right. You're right. Cruther writes, Oprah is not running for any political office. Kevin G, that's for you. One of your anti-Oprah rant, I think that's.
But hey, well, but you can't take away what she said in the past, and you can't take away the fact that Donald Trump, until he came down that escalator, and probably his biggest sin was saying that he was pro-life, because from that point on, he became a racist, he became a xenophobe, and everything. Prior to that, everybody wanted to surround themselves with it. NBC was making boatloads of money off of him, off of The Apprentice. He was on Barbara Walters, Larry King. Every one of these people wanted to be around him.
Well,
Even Jesse Jackson.
You know what happened, Kevin?
Jesse Jackson sung his praises at one point.
You know what happened, Kevin? What happened is running for president exposed him. We didn't really know Trump.
I see.
The process of running for president and everything you have to do and all the media scrutiny, it exposed him. And when you know better, you do better.
And I think that's true.
Well,
I think that's true.
I would point out that he's been a con man from the beginning. Just look at his whole history of ripping off small contractors, on and on and on. Trump University. So
hiring 25.
But Phil, I would say to Nathan's point,
getting awards.
Here's what I would say to Nathan's point, gentlemen. To Nathan's point, gentlemen, before Trump ran for president, you're right, Phil. A lot of that stuff was out there in his history, but most people didn't know it. I mean, if what you knew of Donald Trump was The Apprentice, the casinos that he owns, the hotels that he owns, his proximity to, at one point in time, he was the owner of a professional football team in the USFL. That's how I really first came to know and understand who Donald Trump was, because
changing the sky,
he had the team that I loved in that league. But I think most people didn't know Donald Trump beyond more than just that kind of surface level understanding of who he was until he ran for president. And like with anybody, as that process would do with anybody, all of your past and everything's going to be scrutinized and gone through. And I think that's what happened with him.
Yeah, definitely exposed him. Let's move on. Let's go down to.
Let's not forget the fact that he changed the skyline of New York City and did a lot of development there. As a matter of fact, Jesse Jackson
made a lot of money.
Used to sing his praises. And again, until he came down that escalator, he was never accused of being a racist prior to that. And suddenly,
that's a lie.
Well, that's definitely not true. No. I mean, because
I'm not going to say you're lying, Kevin, but that's just not factually correct.
Yeah, it's not. It's not.
All right. Give me an example.
Well, first of all, the Central Park Five predated his run. The whole Trump University scandal predated his presidential run.
Was that racist?
The accusations against him not renting properties to black people, that predated his
run. Back in 1970.
It doesn't matter when it was.
That predates him coming down the escalator.
There is hardly anybody that's been involved in the real estate business that rents or owns property that have rented it out that haven't at some point in time been accused of discrimination. And as a matter of fact, the case you referred to back in 1970, that case was dismissed with no admission of guilt and that they couldn't prove it. But he did settle the case. And
Right.
that's the only one you guys can hang your hat on.
Yeah, but Kevin, my only point in bringing it up is that you were factually incorrect. You said that until he came down that escalator, nobody claimed that he was a
I should
racist.
have said.
We
I
just
should
pointed
have said
out several examples of that just not being
two
true.
examples. Two examples.
Can
Well, we
I
only need
defend
one.
Donald
I guess I
Trump,
should.
guys? Can I defend
I
Donald
guess
Trump for just a minute, please?
Oh, I want to hear this. Go
Wait a
ahead.
minute. Let me finish.
I want to defend. I want to agree. I want to defend Donald Trump. Just can I have a minute?
Go ahead.
Sure, go right ahead. Be the
Yeah.
first time you have.
I don't believe that Donald Trump is a racist. I believe he is an opportunist. And the historical figure that I would most equate to him is the former governor of Alabama, George Wallace, okay, who, of course, was well known for standing in the door of the courthouse, segregation now, okay, because at that time, it just got him power. Guess what, though? After African Americans in the state got the vote, guess what? Oh, his attitude all changed. I can remember him crowning the Miss Black America. He totally switched and played up for those votes. So, in defense of Donald Trump, sorry, that's in defense of Donald Trump. I would say that he has to be a racist. You have to have some beliefs, even if they're bad beliefs. He has no principles. He has no values. And therefore, I would say he is not a racist.
All right.
No, that's great, Phil. Great ad there.
Thank you.
Bringing up, well, then let's bring up Bill Clinton's mentors of Orville Faubus and.
I was agreeing with you. Don't argue. I was speaking up for your point.
He was agreeing with you, Kevin.
Back to the point.
Take the win, Kevin. Take the win.
Two examples of where somebody was falsely accused of being a racist. The Central Park Five, maybe that has some validity and so on, but apparently, well, did they murder those people or not? Were they involved in that? Were they convicted?
No, absolutely not. That's what they're called, the exonerated five.
Now,
Phil,
how many times have you seen in your prosecutorial history that people were accused of a particular crime and that somebody in power said something that they should be?
Actually, let me answer that, because when I was in the Hamilton County Prosecutor's Office, and I loved the guys there, I loved all the people I worked for, Cy Lease, Joe Dieters, but actually, I'll tell you something. One thing that disturbed me as a prosecutor is that it was too much of an attitude of winning and not doing justice, okay? And I was one prosecutor who, even though I was a very tough, aggressive prosecutor, I said, if I did not believe beyond a reasonable doubt the person charged was guilty, he should not be prosecuted. And that was not an attitude shared or by that office, okay? Now, I don't know if that responds to your question. I will say this. No, I don't agree that somebody on high picks up a phone like Vladimir Putin says, convict this guy. I don't know. Not that. I never experienced that. But I have experienced an attitude in law enforcement sometimes of kind of balls and strikes, winning the game rather than doing what is right.
All right.
Hey, Nathan, I'll just say this on the point of Donald Trump being a racist, and you know, again, I try to be a fair guy, so I'll concede this point. We don't know for 100% that Donald Trump is a racist, because to say that would imply that we know his heart and his mind, and you can never really know for 100% certainty someone's heart and mind. But I will say that he has done things and said things that are racist, which I think is accurate and fair to say, that he has done things and said things that are racist. I would also say this. I can't
let him finish. Let him finish, guys. Let him finish.
I can't remember what the brother's name was who ran against Ron DeSantis in Florida a couple years ago. And he had a great line, which is a great line that I think applies here. When this question came up of whether Ron DeSantis was racist. And he said, well, I don't know whether Ron DeSantis is racist, but I do know that the racists think he's racist. And if you look at, all of the folks who support Donald Trump who are racist, a lot of the racists support this man. So clearly they believe he's singing their tune.
Yeah, as the Klan, David Duke and the Klan, as David Duke and the Klan today.
Oh yeah, let's bring up the Klan. Let's bring up.
Let's not bring up the Klan. Let's not bring up the Klan.
Let's bring up Robert Byrd, huh? Let's bring up the Klan.
Let's bring up a comment from the audience. Brent writes, I am 99.44% sure that Donald Trump is a straight up racist. So he's nearly
Brent's stupid. So we can't vote.
99.44%.
So when Jesse Jackson said, "We need your building skills, your gusto for the people on Wall Street to represent diversity," said at Rainbow Push Coalition event in 1999. 1998 event in front of the same organization, Jackson said, "I now want to bring forth a friend. Well, he is deceptive in that his social style is such that one can miss his seriousness and commitment to success, which is beyond argument." When we opened the Wall Street project, he gave us space in 40 Wall Street, which was to make a statement about our having a presence there. Okay, Jesse Jackson, I'm sure thought he was a racist at that time. The fact that in the city of New York, that Donald Trump hired and had 25% of the contractors minority, when the push was in some of these areas that they have 13 to 14% minority. He was well above that. He was praised for that.
That supports my opportunist theory. Kevin, you and I are finding more and more areas of agreement.
Uh-oh.
Opportunist. Yeah, right.
Uh-oh.
Okay. So when Donald Trump completely funded for about a 3-4 year period of time,
Don't say it.
his historic black university,
Oh, God.
that was racist.
You
the
convinced me he's a civil rights leader.
What about the First Step Act? What about the First Step Act?
Hey, Kevin. Hey, guys, let me bring up the next topic, because we could go down this rabbit hole for a while. And there's another topic that I definitely want to get your opinion on. So let me just move on.
Let me just say this last thing, Nathan. Let me just say this last thing to tie to Jesse.
It's got to be the last thing so we can move on. Go ahead.
Okay, into a nice bow. Look, let's just be real and let's just be honest. You know, Joe Madison, the late Joe Madison, God rest his soul, radio personality, used to have a saying that he would say that in politics and business, there are no permanent friends and enemies. There are only permanent interests, right? And so basically what he meant by that is you and I can disagree on whatever, but where my interests align with your interests, we can kind of find commonality. So I have no doubt that there have been points in Donald Trump's, both his political and in his business career, where his interests have aligned with the interests of people who don't look like him, who he doesn't share political philosophies with. And they said, hey, this is mutually beneficial. Let's get something done. Let's just say that is the reality.
I love how you guys glossed over the fact that on the debate stage, Kamala Harris called Joe Biden a racist to his face, and believed in that so much that she became his.
He didn't use the word. She didn't use the word racist. She gave an example of how he opposed busing. She didn't say he was a racist.
Oh, I see. Right. That the fact that he didn't want his kids being educated or living in a racial jungle, that's not a racist comment.
All right. With that, let me move on.
So let's settle the point here, is that the Democratic Party is
we're not going to settle the point.
The Democratic Party is the party of racism.
We'll get back to that another day, Kevin.
Pro laws, black codes.
We'll get back to that another day. Let me move on.
Manifesto, right on down the line. You look at the history of the Democratic Party.
I'm just glad I'm a Republican. So
all right, let me move on here.
You're not,
and Kevin G, I'm coming to your neck of the woods. This next story, this next hot topic comes from Kentucky, because in Kentucky, the governor has now banned the use of conversion therapy on minors. Now, if you don't know what conversion therapy is, basically it's the idea that you can sit down with someone with a therapist or intense therapy and change their sexual orientation. Okay. That has now been banned by the Democrat governor in your state of Kentucky. I think that is a great thing for the minors, for the children and the families in Kentucky. But what does the panel think? What do you think?
Well, I'm kind of torn on this. Okay. And I'll tell you why. I think that conversion therapy is terrible. Okay. And I'm saying that from just a scientific medical point of view. I mean, it's been totally debunked. In fact, I think there was promoted, I'll think of the name in a minute, because a lot of my church friends kind of were big believers. I believe it's just total bad science. But on the other hand, I'm also a believer in families and doctors kind of making their own decisions about their kids and their health care, which is why I don't like all these attempts by the government to kind of get into people's bedrooms, okay, and that sort of thing. So I guess I'm just a little torn here.
What are you torn about exactly?
I'm torn about the fact that I think that conversion therapy is basically, and it's a bad thing. But
Right.
I'm torn on the other hand because of my belief in privacy and my belief that, I mean, for example, if you want to take abortion or something like that, I believe that those decisions should be made between, as we say, the doctor and the woman, or the doctor and the family. And so, or take the that whole transgender stuff, whether it's operations or give them pills, whatever. I know there's a big push to outlaw that. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with it because I think parents, we Republicans, are supposed to believe in parental rights. We're supposed to believe in keeping things imposed. Oh, but at the same time, a lot of these Republican governors are passing laws outlawing various transgender therapies. So my point is, I generally believe these decisions should be made by the family and with their doctor, and not by the government.
So here's where I would kind of challenge a little bit on that, is that yeah, a little bit, Phil, because mainly because
you're turning on me, man. You're turning on me.
Mainly because of how you started it out. You said it has been debunked and it is bad science. That to me right there is the end of the conversation. That anything that is deemed to be fraudulent.
But do you want the government making that decision?
Not based in science or sure. The government makes those decisions all the time. It's called regulations. You know, if you are in the food and if you are a part of the food industry, you're not allowed to put poisonous additives and things of that nature into food as a protection for individuals who are consuming your products. So
consumer protections.
Yeah, so no medical.
It's a little bit different. That's a little different from medical treatment or psychiatric treatment.
Well, not necessarily, because it's like, you know, medical treatment is still a commodity, right? It's still a commodity that you pay money for, that you go out and that you purchase. Nobody's giving free medical treatment.
Let me ask you, what is your opinion about the push by a lot of Republican governors to basically make it illegal to do various transgender treatments? Do you?
So here's what I think about that. Here's what I do think about that. I think the medical science at this point is inconclusive, right? And so again, I'm basing this off of the medical science, and I don't think
decides
we know it. No, that's a complex issue because I don't think we yet have enough medical evidence over a period of time to let us know with any degree of certainty whether these are effective or ineffective treatments. I'm not saying, you know, there are studies out there that say
they're effective treatment. Who decides if they're effective treatments?
I think in the same way that we do with all things. I mean, in all medical journals, most medical professionals, or at least a consensus of medical professionals, come together and say, hey, science has proven this. Enough papers have been written. We have enough documentation to show that this is.
You're looking at it with the doctors or the medical community. I'm saying if we let the state legislators, for example, or the governor make these decisions, they're not always going to make the scientific one. They're going to do the one that's most political. Take that forgive the name, the abortion drug, mifepristone. Am I saying it right? Okay.
Mifepristone.
There's an effort in all the red states to basically outlaw that. Okay, why? There's a total medical consensus. It's perfectly safe. Blah blah blah. But frankly, for political reasons, they want to outlaw it. So what I'm saying to you is, I agree with you. Are the people who should decide whether a particular treatment is right is the family, not the
politicians. So to your point, then maybe it's not the politicians. Maybe it's the experts in these federal agencies who are allowed to determine, you know, the policy or.
But Governor Beshear is the one making this decision. He's making the decision.
Yeah. Okay. I hear you on that. Yeah, I hear you on that. That's a fair point. I hear you on that.
Yeah, but he's making a decision based upon the available information. And the available information is that it's overwhelmingly junk science. Like you said, Phil, here, let me make a bold statement. You cannot believe in God and believe in conversion therapy. You cannot, because we're all God's creatures. People are born the way they are born. And if that's the way you're born, that means that's the way God wants you to be in this earth, earth one, and it is what it is. Any attempts to try to change that, to me, is an affront to God.
But we could get into a broad theological discussion here.
Yeah, I was going to say you're going to head down a theological road.
Slightly. We need to. Slightly, yes.
Religious circles.
I believe one of the guests on the show
I
has
haven't
some
weighed in here yet.
Let Kevin get in. Let's let Kevin G get in.
Okay. All right. You just said, okay, God made you the way He made you. So you're opposed to genital mutilation. You're gender affirming care, or actually gender reassignment surgery. You're opposed to the drugs that change somebody's makeup in terms of hormones, as far as the DNA, as far as the testosterone for women and so on. No. But I will say this about Governor.
That doesn't contradict my point at all, Kevin. In fact, it affirms
you're changing what God made.
No. What I'm saying is, Kevin, how do you know what your sex is? Because you know it. So if I feel as if I'm in the body of a man, but I'm really a woman, that's how I feel. Period. And the individual should make that decision. That's all I'm saying.
I think part of that problem goes down to a mental health issue. But going to Governor Beshear for a moment, I think Abortion Andy, in his proclamation yesterday, and his executive order,
nice alliteration.
I hope that the conversion therapy goes both ways, because there is a group of people out there that are trying to convince certain people that they are transgender. And I think there's been cases on that. And when you have a kid that at 8 years old thinks that they want to convert from whatever sex to another, that something needs to be done in terms of, first of all, checking something having to do with mental health, making sure that this is done. I don't think there should be any gender surgery on anybody under the age of 18. I'm sorry. But if so much happens during puberty, so much happens in terms of the changing of people's dynamic. We've talked in this podcast before that the brain isn't completely developed until age 26. So if you're taking somebody at age 8 and they make a lifelong, life-altering
decision, who makes the decision, the family or the government? Who makes the decision for their child?
Well,
I think it should be
the family ultimately, but the government should be in the business of providing consumer protections.
Yes, and
Nathan,
let's not forget
that
this is being well supported by the pharmaceutical industry, because once you start down the path of hormone replacement, you have to keep that up for a lifetime, and those drugs are not cheap. So this is a money maker for Big Pharma. And I'm surprised that all the people that have been criticizing Big Pharma all these years, all of a sudden on this particular case, it's okay that Big Pharma actually rips off these people for the rest of their lives. Once you take somebody's, do away with their reproduction, you have interfered with their reproductive rights. So if you're taking away somebody's reproductive rights, why aren't you opposed to that?
So, is this a good thing or not? Do you agree that this is going to be good for the children in Kentucky?
If people are not going to be given and given propaganda in terms of, yeah, you are transsexual, and yes, you need to change your body, you need to become a woman, or you need to become a man, and all this sort of stuff, that, in my opinion, is conversion therapy as well. And when they go under the knife before the age of 18, that's conversion therapy right there.
Here, let me just add this, Nathan, and part of what makes this such a complex conversation. I'm going to try to, bring this in to the reality of kind of where we are. But I got to make this point real quick, where Kevin was talking about Big Pharma having people on medicine for the rest of their life. It doesn't just happen with hormone therapy. I think Big Pharma's got a lot of people addicted to a lot of medications that they got to be on for the rest of their life. But that's for another show for us to have a conversation about Big Pharma keeping people on the hook for the rest of their lives. But look, the challenge here is this. Is we live in a democratic republic that is, and not a theocracy. Okay. We are a country that is governed, based on rules and laws, not religious beliefs. However, within the framework of our Constitution and the way our country is structured is the protection for the freedom of religion. So when you get into issues like these, you start to get into people's deeply held religious convictions versus what is actual provable science that should be made into public policy or regulations that protect American consumers. And when you're talking about that, that creates a very complex web of discussion, because you're not going to tell somebody who believes that in terms of what you said, that God made men and women, right? And that's the way that it is. And anybody else who thinks anything other than that suffers from some sort of mental illness or demonic possession, which, and again, I'm just putting out there.
Did I say that?
These are the conversations that take.
Kevin, why do you have to lie about everything I say? Why do you have to lie?
I didn't even attribute that to Kevin. What's he talking about? I just said that there are some people out there who believe that. I say that as somebody.
You said about mental health. You don't think that somebody that is a male or a female that wants to become another gender, that there isn't something else going on in their brain, and that something needs to be maybe talked about or at least looked into? I don't know if you have any
by their family.
Look, I don't know if you guys
family, maybe.
I don't know.
Wait a minute. I don't know if you guys have any experience with this, but I have in at least friends and people that I know of whose children are going through some of this. And you can go online and in a 15-minute with a quote therapist, and let's break down that word, separate the word, the rapist. Okay. So you go to some of these mental health places, and the supposed therapist, within 15 minutes, you fill out, they ask you 3 questions, and they say, I will approve you for gender reassignment surgery. Is that medically accurate? Do you think that if somebody,
I would have to prove that first, Kevin.
And this is my point.
What do you mean have to prove what?
This is sort of my
what you just said. I don't know if that's actually happening.
And it goes what? Nathan, it goes back
to the fact that I know people that this has happened to is suddenly not happening. Nathan,
no, I'm not saying that you're lying. I'm saying that for me to actually give you a hardcore opinion about it, I'd have to do some research to ascertain as to whether this is really happening or not.
Look at it from the one side and look at it from the other. And
we
don't
are.
just say, no, what you do is you take the talking points from so-called medical professionals or whatever the liberal talking points are, but you don't look at anything on the other side. You have never expressed the opposite side of a discussion.
But that's why you're here, Kevin.
I do not trust.
You express the opposite.
I do not trust what the CDC tells us on damn near anything, and I hardly trust the medical profession.
But who do you trust? Who do you trust more than CDC? The MyPillow guy?
Okay, well, if you okay, you want to talk about the CDC? Look at the forerunner of the CDC. They were the organization that back in 1932 instituted the Tuskegee syphilis experiment on black men to have them infected with syphilis, and followed them for the next 40 years to see the effects. Only gave them placebos, even though there was a cure for that.
And that's why there's still a lot of lingering distrust from the black community about the CDC and the medical establishment.
The people
that doesn't mean that they don't have a role.
The people that perpetrated that on the black population were never prosecuted, and they rolled themselves into the CDC, changed their name from the National Institute of Health, and they just went on with their whole thing.
We should have a conversation about reparations one day then.
Oh
God.
Shit, Nathan, you keep talking about that. We're going to talk about the subject of the Democratic Party being a party of racists, but we never talk about that. You guys brought up last week that we want to talk about the Bond Hill thing, which I think is more important than one of the other things, probably one of the most important things you guys put on the agenda, but we've ignored that. And so it's all these, hot button issues. What?
We talked about the Bond Hill thing.
No, we didn't. We didn't talk about that last week. Not when I was on.
Yeah, you weren't with us, but we did talk about it, yes.
Oh, I see.
But Kevin, you already know you're always free to put whatever topics out there for us to talk about. that makes things easier for me. I'm all for it.
Yeah.
So let's
Well,
make
let's
sure we
look
get
at
together
this.
moving
Why
forward and
won't
make
you
that happen.
guys let us talk about Mark Robinson, who identifies as the Black Nazi? I think it's a great topic.
Well, let's
We need to get
make sure
researched on it before we do that.
we get those on the agenda for the next show, because I'm not sure how much
All
time
right.
we got left
All right.
to be able to get into
All right.
deeply
All right.
into that in this one. But Nathan, I just wanted to go back because I said I didn't get a chance to finish my thought about the challenges of talking about this in terms of, you know, religion and how we try to structure our society. And I made the comment about, you know, demonic possession. I saw somebody in the chat put a question mark next to that. I'm not saying that that's what I believe or that that's even a real thing. What I'm saying is that's those are conversations that you have going on in this country, whether it's in religious circles or wherever, where people are trying to figure out or trying to explain through whatever lens they see the world, how they understand what is happening. What I am saying is that in a country like the United States, where you're talking about public policy that is not supposed to be determined based on religion. Okay, so we talk about that a lot. And I say this as a pastor who fully believes that, as for me and my house, I'm gonna do what God says. That's my personal belief, and the Constitution allows me to believe that. But everybody in this country is not a Christian. Everybody doesn't subscribe to the same Bible that I read from. So in a democracy in which we live, I cannot impose my religious convictions on another individual who does not share those. That's not the country we live in. If you want to live in a country like that, then you need to move to someplace else, because that's not what we do here in the United States of America. So with that, you've got to look at, what does the science say? What is medically provable? What is good practice that we know about? And that is where I think we have to have these public policy conversations. But it gets to Phil's point. If I say, as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord, does that not give me the right in my house to make medical decisions that I feel like are best for me and what I do in my house and my religious conviction? I don't have the answer to that, Nathan. It's very difficult. It's very complex. This is the mismatch of stew that we're fighting over in this country right now, is that when my religious freedoms and what I believe cross over into the realm of government and public policy that's not supposed to be about that, how do you reconcile that?
You deal with it.
Well, let me
deal
say,
with it.
you brought up a topic. Go ahead, Nathan. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Phil. Jump on in there.
One of the topics that Kevin just brought up, which is kind of scary to me, he emphasized correctly that supposedly in this country, as that we are free to not only practice our religion, but we are a nation, as the founding fathers said, that basically we can't make any laws about that, bridging religion, blah blah. But there is a movement in this country, regretfully led by people of my faith and Kevin's faith, which basically wants to make this, quote, a Christian
Kevin,
nation.
whose faith?
And it is a powerful movement. And
Which Kevin's faith? Which Kevin are you referring
Kevin
to?
and I are Christ followers. Kevin Aldridge, not you. So you may be, but I'm just saying we're both Christ followers. I'm sorry, that's what I meant. But the point is, there is a very, very strong movement which wants to, quote, make this a Christian nation. And what they like to do is twist the language of the founding fathers, or I pull out quotes, kind of isolated quotes, to say, oh, this is a Christian nation. And that's what it was intended. I just want to say, I think that's a dangerous trend, and unfortunately a trend that's getting even more stronger.
You know what? I think on that topic, and here's how I think about it from my own theology, is that even though we say that, I think a lot of the principles, I think there are certain universal truths, whether you think of that as spirituality or God or whatever, that our constitutional framework is based upon. I mean, that we have laws against lying, cheating, stealing, killing people, not bearing false witness, not coveting other people's property. I mean, these are essentially the 10 Commandments or God's laws if you do. And if you look at the framework of most laws we have in this country, they're built on that. This idea of freedom and liberty is based in the very concept of God's, notion of free will, that we all are given the right to freely choose how to live and make decisions for ourselves. That's the very foundation and framework of this country. So it's a tough thing to say that while we don't want to rule or govern based on religion, I think some people who make this argument, I think it is true that some of the very foundational elements that we live under in our society, one might say, are based on sort of these spiritual or heavenly principles or truths as it is. So when you hear people say, oh, well, the founders based this on, Christian beliefs, it may not be necessarily quote unquote Christian beliefs, but it is the beliefs of this higher moral imperative that we all should live under, whether you believe that's God or whether you want to call it something else. That's the foundation sort of what we live under. And I think that's what makes these conversations in our country in particular, very difficult. I mean, when you look at the genesis of a lot of the conflicts, overseas, particularly in the Middle East, they're based in, longstanding religious traditions and conflicts that date back, centuries. So religion and what people believe in is a very big part of geopolitics and local politics and everything else. And it's very hard to just talk about that stuff and deal with it.
When you start off with the Declaration of Independence saying that we are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, I think that kind of sets the tone for what our founding fathers believed in. But I think a true case can be made. You can be an agnostic and you can actually be an atheist, but also realize the fact that in order to have a well-ordered society, you have to have certain rules and regulations, and whether they're based on religion or not, the fact is that, you shouldn't have a society where people steal. You shouldn't have a society where people kill. When you look back on some of the other certain members of the 10 Commandments, there isn't a religion out there that doesn't have certain principles in terms of whether it's 10 Commandments, 12 Commandments, whatever, that are certain guidelines in which you follow. And so for society, you can make a case for almost anything and take God out of it if you want and say, what would be best for society? How do you have a proper society without these rules, laws, and regulations?
And that's why I say that Governor Beshear in Kentucky with this move banning conversion therapy is doing what's best for the overall society in Kentucky. Everybody's not going to like it, but I think my opinion is,
and I hope it goes both ways, Nathan. I hope that the conversion therapy on both ways. I hope the conversion therapy of kids who think they're trans, that are indoctrinated with that and believe that needs to be looked into and stopped. There needs to be, it used to be. I've known a couple of people that have back in the 90s guy that became a woman.
Yeah, so have I.
And in talking to that person and finding out what the medical profession was telling her at the time, and it was a process. It wasn't just like, oh, today I make the decision, tomorrow I get gender reassignment surgery. It's a process, and I think a lot of that is being skipped. And I fully believe that no child below the age of 18 should have gender reassignment surgery.
And so you should make sure that within your household, Kevin, your children don't have that. But I don't think you have the right to tell somebody else's family what to do in that case.
You got to stop before you go into that. You got to correct what Kevin said, because it's not as simple as he makes it sound. It's not that you walk into a doctor's office and say, "Hey, I'm a woman and I want to become a man." Right. That there is a process. There is.
How long is that process?
Kevin, I don't know exactly how long the process is, but there is a process. There's mental.
So you throw something out, and we're not supposed to challenge it. I don't believe that. I don't believe that, Kevin. I'll use your words. Okay. I don't believe that.
Okay.
So Kevin, you think that people are just walking into a doctor's office saying, "I want to change my sex," and it's happening within a couple of weeks?
I don't know if it's a couple of weeks or whatever, but I do know that it should be a process that is done over a period of time.
If you don't know, Kevin, how can you make a declarative statement?
And it should not. There should
have no opinion.
There should be no gender reassignment before the age of 18.
And in your household with your children,
no, I'm talking about the good of society.
But you can't tell someone else what to do in their household. Like if my child comes to me and say they want to do this,
should not be allowed to do this.
That should be a conversation between me and my child. It's none of your business. That's my child.
That's not true. If I want,
it is true.
So if you want, so if your child,
how is my child's gender reassignment your business?
Because for the good of society, because good later on, you have to have a protection of children. You have to have protection, because you're going to tell me that no parent out there abuses their child, that there's no child abuse within families, and that the government doesn't have the right to step in.
I'm not telling you that. What I'm telling you, Kevin, is that you don't care more about my child than I do. That's what I'm telling you. And so I don't care more about somebody else's child than they do. And I'm not going to act like I do.
When should gender reassignment surgery be performed? At what age?
To my understanding, the way we think about it in our household, that's a very serious lifelong decision that should be made with an adult brain. So I would agree with you in terms of my household. That would be my preference with my
about
children.
Your household. I'm talking about society.
If you're asking, but I can't speak for society. I can only speak for my household.
Let me give an example.
In your household, if you want your child at age 13 to go get a driver's license, you should be allowed to do that.
But that's illegal.
Let me give you a good example.
Exactly. So it should be illegal. If somebody below the age of 18 has their gender reassigned for the rest of their life.
But you're comparing apples and oranges.
Hey Nathan, let me give you a good example of a small example of kind of the extreme nature of what Kevin's argument is. And I don't think any of us would disagree in a general sense that yes, this is a very serious life decision, and one would hope that it's and I will want to believe that in most cases it is not a snap judgment where somebody just decides one day they want to change their sex and the next day or a couple of weeks later that's not the case, and that they would also and that any minor would also do it under the supervision of a doctor and the consultation of
unless they're taking a Minnesota sanctuary.
Now, granted, I'm not going to sit here and say that every parent out there is a responsible parent, because we know that that's not the case. But we're talking about the vast majority of responsible parents who are out there. Okay, but here's an example. This is what I think. And this is where it goes back to the science. So let's just take cigarettes, for example, as Kevin wants to talk. They're all nature and manner of things in society that if we wanted to say, hey, for the good of society, we should outlaw this or get rid of it. Hey, let's get rid of smoking. Let's get rid of supersized meals at McDonald's, because we know that, you know, all of those calories and things and preservatives and whatnot that they put in food is not good. No, we don't do that. People have the freedom to decide, hey, if I want to smoke two packs of cigarettes a day, knowing that, Kevin, let me finish, please. If I want to smoke 2 packs of cigarettes a day, knowing that cigarettes cause cancer, right, I'm going to do it. But you know what we require as the government? Right? Warning labels on the cigarettes that say, hey, this is dangerous. Hey, studies have shown that if you do this, it can develop cancer. You know what? It's not going to develop cancer in everybody, because there's some people who smoke 2 packs a day for like 50 years and they never develop lung cancer. There's some people who, you know, smoke a couple packs a day for a couple of years and, you know, they develop more serious cases. So there's no one single thing that's all together. So here's what I'm saying on this, is that the government's role should be to make sure that we have the best medical science available, that people who want to make their decisions, whatever that is, are able to do it under the protection of knowing that we have the best information, the best studies, so that even if I decide and other people disagree, whether this is good for society, good for an individual or not, if I've got all of the information there and it is carefully regulated, right, and you know what you're going into when you get into it, who am I to say you don't have the right to make that decision?
So, is there an age under which sex reassignment surgery should not be performed?
Maybe that's part of the conversation, Kevin. I'm not saying that shouldn't be a part of the conversation.
Okay.
We have
If you're
laws
talking
in this
about-
country where you can't.
If you're talking about the medical profession,
Yeah.
if you're talking about the medical profession and coming to some sort of a conclusion, shouldn't they be giving all of the information? Should they be upfront with people saying that you are making?
How do you know they're not being? How do you know they're not doing that, Kevin?
Have you looked at some of the people that have
Have
been?
you looked at it? Have you? I mean,
I have.
Okay.
I
so
have
you know
read
people who
the
had
stories
gender
about,
reassignment surgery
and they wanted it reversed years later, and they were lied to going into it that it could be reversed. Do you know that? I mean, have you been following over in Europe that there's several countries over there that are banning sex reassignment surgery for minors, and they're turning away from that, even though that was the hot topic or the thing to do back in the day. They're going away from that. But when you're talking about a life altering, and you're talking, when you're talking about reproductive rights, what we keep hearing, we got to protect reproductive rights. Well, when you reassign somebody surgery before they make an informed consent and at age where it is age appropriate, then yes, you are doing something that should be against the law.
But
if somebody can't sign a contract by the age of 18 that they, voting rights, they can't drink till the age of 21. Society puts certain age limits on certain things. And to change somebody to take away their reproductive rights for the rest of their life and then not inform them that, oh, by the way, you are now going to be tethered to this hospital, these pharmaceutical companies for the rest of your life.
You know what? In my head, Kevin, I agree with you. 18 is that magical number. I'm with you on that. But you know what? Parents do a lot of things. I see parents do a lot of things with their children that are under 18 that I don't agree with, and I'm not doing my
Nathan,
child.
but
it's not my business. But it's not my business. When do we lose that being a thing? Mind your business. It's not your business.
No, well, Nathan, I don't think it's that simple. Here's where I will agree with Kevin.
Why isn't it?
I think broadly in general, we agree with this in society. And this is something, again, that we have to come together on, vote on, decide on, because that's how all of these things are decided, in our country, is that, we do go out of our way in this country to protect children. That's just a fact. We do that in a variety of different measures. We have laws and things in place that say that until you get to a consenting age, these sorts of things are not recommended, or they're a bad idea. Now we know that you're not
against the law.
Now listen, we know that you're not allowed to drink in this country until you're 21 years of age. But all of us in here know or have heard of people who slip little Johnny, a beer, or let him smoke a cigarette when he's 7 or 10 years old. And we generally tend to look at those parents as like bad parents. Like that's irresponsible to let little Johnny at 10.
But it's not your business.
Huh? Yeah,
but it's not your business.
But it's not. But because of children's services, find out you slipping little Johnny some weed and some cigarettes. You think they ain't gonna? You think they ain't gonna?
You know what? I actually challenge again.
But
apples
Phil,
and
your
oranges.
prosecutor is children's services coming in that case.
Yeah, but I
It'll be
challenge
a
the way you
heartbeat.
said the question, though, Kevin.
They'll be at the
I
door
challenge
in a
that.
heartbeat.
I'm not going to compare giving your kids alcohol and weed as a minor to parents deciding whether they want their child to get gender reassignment surgery. Those are two completely different things.
Right. One is more, I think Kevin's point is one is more serious. One is a more serious act.
I think they're both serious, but they're two completely different things.
But you can't say that. You can't have it both ways, Nathan. You can't say they're both serious, but they're completely different. If they're serious, they're serious.
Well, they're serious, but they're serious for two different reasons.
Nathan, you can take a drink at age 7 and stop. You can't change your sex at age 7.
Tell me this then. Tell me this.
I would only tell me this. Because there are some alcoholics, I won't even put a number on it by saying it a lot, but there are some alcoholics who became alcoholics at a young age, and you never stop being an alcoholic, even if you remain sober.
But tell me this.
Say you can get out of drinking is not an act.
Tell me this. Let's say you got a neighbor right next door to you, and they've got a child that's 13, born a male, and they decide to allow their son to now become their daughter. How is that your business? How does that impact you at all?
Okay, it impacts us because what they are doing is they're doing a life altering and a situation where that person is going to be under the pharmaceutical companies for the rest of their lives.
How does that impact you?
Well, the fact is that if you are going to take away somebody's reproductive rights, which we are being lectured on not ad nauseum, that you don't interfere with somebody's reproductive rights, that has interfered with somebody's reproductive rights. And now you are taking somebody that if they decide to go off of this gene therapy, then what happens to them after that?
So it doesn't impact you. It doesn't impact you whatsoever. It's none of your business. There's no impact whatsoever to you if your neighbor's child goes through gender reassignment surgery, other than the fact that you might not like it or it offends your spiritual beliefs or whatever. There's no impact whatsoever. That's their business. We need to get back to, in some levels, minding our own business. You might not like it, but you don't have to like everything in America. So what? Go on with your life. That's it.
Well, I'll just say that I think one of the most effective comments by any of the people running for president or vice president, I like what Tim Walz said about mind your own business. He kind of
mind your own business.
Well, unless you don't take the vaccine, and then we'll haul you out and get it.
Let me finish.
You come out of your house, they'll light you up and shoot paintballs at you. Okay.
He said,
mind your own
let him get it in, Phil.
He said,
Kevin, let him get it in, Phil.
In Minnesota have their sex changed. He doesn't mind minding your business when it comes to gun rights, when it comes to gender reassignment surgery, when it comes to other things. But when it comes to things, when it's appropriate for him, mind your own damn business.
Let Phil get his Phil didn't get a chance to get his thoughts in. Phil did not get a chance to get his thoughts in. Let Phil get his thoughts in.
So where does mind your own damn business fall into the heading of having a snitch line when during COVID, if somebody stepped outside their house? Is that mind your own damn business? No.
We'll come back to that, but Phil, go right ahead. Go ahead, Phil.
I'll answer. Let me answer that after Phil finishes, Nathan.
Let Phil go ahead. Let Phil get it in. Go ahead, Phil.
Just to clarify, I believe it's. He said it's mind your own damn business, I think is the correct quote, just to get that right. And in fairness, he said that in the issue of abortion. Okay, he wasn't talking about any. I don't believe of these other issues. My only point.
Well, then you brought it up for everything else, then.
Well, my only point is, I just thought that expression really encapsulated. I thought it encapsulated the issue in a very effective way. As opposed, that's just what I was saying.
So let me just shed some light on Kevin G between the difference between the two situations that he just mentioned, COVID and convert or transgender surgery or gender assignment surgery. And really, actually, he kind of made your point there on that, Nathan, is one thing affects you directly, the other does not. We're talking about a communicable disease that's highly contagious, that if you are not vaccinated, you have the potentially to spread to other people. So that does matter to me. You coughing on me in a series of COVID, we're going to have a problem, because your decision not to cover your mouth and cough when you're around me directly affects me.
But the vaccine doesn't prevent you from getting COVID.
To Nathan's point, gender assignment, someone else's gender assignment surgery doesn't directly affect me or impact my life. You can make me sick by not being vaccinated.
We already know how many lies were told by the CDC and Anthony Fauci.
Kevin G, let him get it in. Let Kevin A get it in, and I'll give you the floor.
No, that was the end of my comment. Is simple. I mean, I don't know how anybody doesn't see the difference that one directly affects you and the other doesn't. I'm not saying that people should not have the right to make their own medical decision about whether they want to get vaccinated or trust the vaccine. I'm only saying that at least I have a place to say, hey, your decision directly can impact me because you can make me sick. So there's more of a ground there than for me to say, hey, your gender reassignment surgery really has no impact on me at all. It really is about you.
Okay, so you brought up COVID. COVID was highly contagious, and so was the flu. But the death rate was you got 99.9% chance of surviving COVID unless you have a pre-existing condition, unless you have some comorbidity. And until, when you look at that and how many people survived and some people got COVID, didn't even know it. The fact that if you supposedly stay the distance, if you stay away from people, supposedly you don't get it. But to talk about this vaccine and to force mandate the vaccine when in fact the vaccine isn't preventing people from getting COVID. I've known people that have been vaxxed. In fact, my neighbor maxed the vax and she's caught COVID now 3 times.
But the vaccine was never supposed to prevent you from getting it.
Right.
It was just supposed to make sure
my
to lessen
vaccine,
the impact of it.
But you can say the same thing about the flu vaccine. But you can say the same thing about the flu vaccine.
Hey, Kevin, let Kevin G get a word in. Go right ahead, Kevin.
Okay. You're saying the vaccine wasn't supposed to work? Well, what's the purpose of a vaccine?
No. I said the vaccine was not supposed to stop you from getting COVID. That's well documented. It was supposed to lessen the impact if you got it again.
According to what they were saying. And of course, we don't know that that's 100% accurate. Just like we don't know that the fact that Anthony Fauci for years lied to us. He knew where COVID came from and denied that it came from Wuhan. He denied any involvement in the gain of function, paying for that or propping that up. We know that Anthony Fauci, when SARS-CoV-1 back in 2003 to 2005 was out there, that he stopped looking at the vaccine of that because somehow it mysteriously disappeared. So
Kevin,
research on that.
Where are you going with this?
So when SARS-CoV-2 came about, we didn't have all the research that would have been there.
No, but
SARS-CoV-1 been taken care of.
He's weaving it together like Donald Trump. He's weaving it together.
What's the point of this? We were talking about.
Are you going to trust Anthony Fauci, who lied to us about where the disease came from, how it happened, and the fact that he was probably funding that?
Yeah. To answer your question directly, Kevin, I would trust Fauci over the MyPillow guy and Donald Trump any day when it comes to COVID or any other thing related to medical science. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Well,
100%.
Then you're free to kill yourself then. Because I don't.
Did you get the vaccine, Kevin?
I mean, if you follow what Anthony Fauci,
Kevin, did you get the vaccine?
I did not.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
And that's
your right. I respect that.
Kevin. That's Kevin's right.
If
that's Kevin's right. But don't cough on me. Don't cough on me, because if you cough on me and I get COVID, you're gonna hear from my attorney.
All right, Kevin, were you mandated as a member of?
Right, and it's my right to sue.
Were you mandated to get the vax?
I was not mandated to get the vax. I got the vaccine on my own accord. Here's what I'll say about the vaccine.
Gannett and
here's what people don't talk about, right? The difference between vaccines that have eradicated certain diseases is because these diseases were able to be knocked down and they weren't allowed to mutate and become different strains of the same disease. What you have with the flu, and a lot of times what you have definitely with COVID, is you have these different strains. So every time you come out with a different strain, it's a mutation. It's a little bit different than the version that you might have been vaccinated with before. So when people say, well, I got the vaccine and it didn't stop me from getting COVID, that's because there's a new strain. But as you said, it lessens the impact of, and this is where people, confuse information when they want to make, sort of like these black and white, points that they kind of want to put out there, for people without getting into the nuance or the details or the specific of things, which is difficult to talk about, obviously, in formats like this, where you got to try to say something in a couple of quick seconds. You can get that off and people will take that and run with it. But, again, going back to our overall point about, people's rights, staying out of people's bedrooms and allowing them to make their own decisions. I'll go back to the general point again, as it pertains to minors. I'm not talking about adults. I'm only saying that in this country, we have myriad protections that are in place in a lot of different places that say for this to happen, you need to be of a certain age. That's whether you're parent legally, okay? You have to be of a certain age. Let me put that there because parents can still do whatever they want to do in the confines of their own homes. So this is a conversation about perhaps what should be legal. And we do those things mainly because we understand that children are in a state of growth, both physiologically as well as mentally and emotionally, and that you are not at your maturest point when you're a young child to be able to make a decision. And so we get to ages of consent. I think that is a worthy conversation that's not trying to tell people how to raise their kids, but it's a reasonable conversation when we talk about society at large and the amount of children that we have. And I do think we have an obligation to try to protect our children as best we can when we're talking about serious, life altering type situations. So it's not a matter of whether they and if you want to say there should be exceptions for that, then there should be significant exceptions that say, hey, as I'm a parent, and if I'm going to insist on this before the age of consent, maybe there's certain criteria that you have to.
So I want to make sure I'm clear on where you are, Kevin A. Are you saying that you believe that Governor Beshear, by banning conversion therapy, is protecting children? Is it the right thing to do or not?
Well, I think it's the right thing to do because I think it's bad science.
Okay.
I think it's bad science. I mean, I think I started that. I think
Yeah,
I started out.
You did say that. You did say that, but I forgot.
Bad debunked science. To me, that's the end of the conversation.
And Kevin G, where are you on it? Did Governor Beshear, your governor, because you're in Kentucky, did he do the right thing?
If it goes both ways, if it stops the conversion therapy on the other side, yes, fine.
So currently, I don't believe the legislation does. It's just addressing conversion therapy, trying to, turn people who think that they're one way, let's say gay, to not being gay.
The conversion therapy, I mean, there's all kinds of different I mean, if you're talking about some of these conversion therapies where somebody is taken and given shock treatments or some other kind of
I think this is just therapy.
Brainwashing and that type of thing. No, I don't. But if you're as a parent, if you're trying to talk to that child and talk to them about that, realize what you're going through, maybe let's look and see what you're going through, and maybe from some sort of a counseling or something along those lines, and that talking about how this is a life-altering effect on you, and that this is not reversible, and that somebody is taking away your reproductive rights. And if somebody decides that, okay, maybe I won't act on this now, is that conversion therapy? Again, it depends on what you're talking. If you're talking about radical, some of the stuff that I've heard as far as some of these, almost like a cult type of thing. No, I think that in any instance, I don't think you need a ban on that. It should be against the law to begin with.
All right. And Phil, you're on the fence.
But now, as far as the other side, I think
listen.
Conversion therapy on that side needs to be stopped.
Listen, I have been a politician. I have every right to talk out of, which is exactly what I intend to do on this issue. Yes, I'm on the fence.
Okay, on the fence. Hey, listen, thank you so much for being here, everybody. I appreciate you. To the audience, thank you as well. Please like and share this. And if you haven't already done so, subscribe to our YouTube channel. It is so important that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can find us at Hot Mic Podcast Crew on YouTube. Fellas, another spirited debate. We can agree to disagree. And we'll be back on Tuesday at 1 p.m. Tuesday at 1 p.m. Have a great rest of your Friday and weekend.
I will not be there. I'll be podcasting.
Okay. We'll catch up with you hopefully next Friday. Appreciate you all. And until next time, have a great day.
Thanks, guys. Same to you. Bye.